I tame wild horses better than your men, the Apache said. The rancher laughed, then was left stunned. The air inside the dome smelled faintly of earth and metal, a strange combination that reminded Jeb, the rancher, of home, of the open prairies of old Earth. He stood on the observation deck, arms crossed, watching the wild horses gallop freely across the enclosed landscape. Their hooves barely kicked up dirt in the low gravity, and their manes floated like ribbons behind them. Jeb loved these creatures. They were strong, fast, and beautiful, but most of all, he loved the idea that he could train them. Humans had tamed wild horses on Earth for thousands of years, and he had done it himself before coming to Mars. Here, in this new world, he had built a small empire of domes, each one holding a herd of genetically engineered horses that could survive the harsh Martian environment. "Morning, Jeb," called a voice from behind. He turned to see Sam, his assistant, carrying a tray of nutrient packs. Sam's face was smudged with red dust, and he looked tired but alert, as if he had been up all night thinking about the horses. "Morning," Jeb replied, forcing a grin. "Watch these horses, Sam." "This is human skill at work." Sam raised an eyebrow. "You really think you can train them better than anyone?" Jeb chuckled, a low, confident sound. "Better than anyone. Faster, smarter, stronger. Machines might be clever, but they'll never understand a horse like I do." As if to emphasize his words, the horses suddenly ran in perfect formation, responding to the gentle whistles and hand gestures of Jeb's team. The motion was almost hypnotic, 4 horses moving as one, tails high, manes streaming in the low Martian wind. Jeb's pride swelled. He turned to Sam with a grin. "See, perfect harmony, that's the human touch. Nature obeys when humans lead." Sam hesitated. "Maybe, but have you considered other ways, different approaches? We are not on Earth, you know." Jeb waved him off. "Sam, I've been training horses since I could walk. Mars doesn't change that. If anything, it makes it more impressive. These horses are tougher than anything you've seen." Just then, a figure appeared at the edge of the dome. She moved with an easy confidence, her long braids swinging behind her. Kaya, an Apache descendant engineer who specialized in terraforming and animal behavior, had arrived. She carried nothing but a small satchel, and her eyes were sharp, bright with curiosity. "I hear someone thinks they can tame wild horses better than anyone," she said, her voice calm, almost teasing. "Is that true?" Jeb laughed, a rich, hearty sound. "That's me. Name's Jeb, and you are?" "Kaya," she replied. "I'm here to help with the terraforming project. But I also know horses, maybe more than your men." Jeb's smile widened. "Your men? I don't need anyone's help. I do it my way and it works." Kaya tilted her head, studying him. "I see. You think machines and force can replace understanding. I wonder if that's true." Jeb laughed again, louder this time. "Understanding? I understand them. I've trained horses all my life. Come on, watch me." With a swift gesture, he whistled sharply. A few horses trotted toward him, necks arched, eyes bright. Their response was nearly perfect. Jeb nodded, satisfied. "See, nothing complicated, just patience, consistency, and a little authority. That's all it takes." Kaya didn't move. She only smiled faintly. "Interesting, but authority alone doesn't make a horse obey." Jeb waved his hand. "Watch and learn." "That's all I can say." For the next hour, Jeb demonstrated his training techniques. He whistled, gestured, and guided the horses through simple routines. Sam took notes, impressed, but Kaya remained quiet. She only observed, her eyes following the horses' subtle movements, the way they lifted their heads, shifted their weight, and flicked their ears. When Jeb finally paused, breathing heavily and grinning, he turned to Kaya. "Well, are you impressed?" Kaya's smile widened, but it was quiet, controlled. "Impressive, yes, but fast, perhaps, strong, certainly. But do they listen to you, or do they only follow because they must?" Jeb frowned. "Of course they listen, that's what training is." "No," Kaya said softly. "Real understanding is when they choose to follow you. When they trust you, not fear you. You have strength, but not patience." Jeb laughed. Patience. I've got plenty of patience. It's called experience. I've been doing this longer than you've been alive. Kaya didn't argue. She simply nodded. Then, in a voice calm and confident, she said, I tame wild horses better than your men. Jeb's laughter echoed through the dome. You little engineer girl can do better than my trained crew. That's rich. Show me. I'll bet my best horse on it. Kaya's eyes sparkled, but she didn't respond immediately. Instead, she walked toward the edge of the herd. The horses noticed her, ears twitching, muscles shifting. They didn't run or panic. They simply watched. Slowly, she crouched, keeping her movements smooth and deliberate. Then, without a single whistle or gadget, she extended her hand toward a young stallion that had been skittish all morning. The horse hesitated. Then, in a movement so subtle it almost looked like instinct, it stepped forward. Kaya's hand hovered just above its muzzle and the stallion sniffed it carefully. She whispered something, low and soft, that Jeb couldn't hear. The horse relaxed. It lowered its head, pressed its nose into her palm, and then, to Jeb's astonishment, allowed her to lead it without resistance. Jeb's jaw dropped. That's impossible," Sam whispered beside him, equally stunned. "Did you see that? She just walked it over." Kaya smiled faintly, standing upright, still holding the horse gently. "They respond when they feel safe, not controlled." Jeb swallowed hard. That's a fluke." Kaya shook her head. "No fluke. Observation, respect, patience, that's all it takes." For the first time, Jeb felt a twinge of doubt. He had been proud of his methods, confident in his superiority. And now, a stranger, an engineer, had outdone him with nothing but understanding. The rest of the herd, seeing Kaya with the young stallion, began to calm. The wild energy that had seemed impossible to contain was slowly replaced by trust, a quiet harmony. Jeb watched, torn between pride and awe. How do you do that?" Kaya simply shrugged. "I watch, I wait, and I learn. The horses tell me what they need if I listen carefully enough. You've trained them to obey. I train them to choose." The words hung in the air like the dust around them. Jeb realized that this wasn't about skill or experience alone. It was about connection, understanding, and perhaps a touch of humility he had never known he needed. He stepped back, finally nodding. "All right," he said slowly. "You've got my attention. Let's see how far you can go." Kaya's smile widened just slightly. "I'm ready." As the sun cast long shadows across the red plains of Mars, the stage was set. Two humans, each brilliant in their own way, faced a challenge neither had expected. And somewhere in the wind, the wild horses seemed to sense it too. This was no ordinary day, no ordinary trainer. Something new had begun. And on Mars, in a world still learning to bloom, every small victory mattered. The next morning, the dome was quiet except for the soft thrum of life support systems. Red dust clung to the outer walls, casting long, orange shadows across the Martian plains. Jeb arrived early, as always, checking on the horses before the sun climbed higher. He was eager, anxious even, to see what Kaya would do today. Kaya was already there. She crouched near the edge of the herd, her hands resting lightly on her knees. The horses moved around her in careful arcs, never touching her, but always aware of her presence. It was a delicate dance, invisible to anyone who didn't know what to look for. Jeb stepped closer, arms crossed, trying to hide his curiosity. "All right," he said, clearing his throat. "Show me again. Let's see if yesterday was just luck." Kaya didn't answer immediately. Instead, she extended a hand toward a nervous mare near the back. Her movements were slow, deliberate, almost like she was breathing with the horse. The mare stiffened, ears twitching, but didn't bolt. "See," Kaya said softly. "You don't push, you wait, you watch, you understand." Jeb frowned. "Watching, understanding, that's slow." "I don't have time to go slow. We've got schedules, feedings, terraforming deadlines. Horses need results now." Kaya tilted her head. "True, but fast results often last only a short time. Understanding lasts forever. They remember who treats them with respect." Jeb shook his head, unconvinced, but he stayed to watch. Kaya began moving among the horses, one by one. She spoke softly, almost whispering, and each horse responded in its own way. A foal nuzzled her hand. A stallion lowered its head without fear. Even the most restless horses, the ones Jeb had labeled impossible to train, moved closer, curious rather than nervous. "How do you?" Jeb began, but stopped, realizing no question could capture what he was seeing. Kaya glanced at him, a faint smile on her lips. "I listen. Every movement, every twitch, every sound is a message. Horses talk if you know how to hear." Jeb frowned. He had trained countless horses in his life, but never like this. His methods were straightforward, commands, gestures, consistency, but Kaya's approach was different. She didn't command, she guided, she didn't force, she invited. After a few minutes, Kaya led a small group toward a fenced training area. The horses followed willingly, their movements fluid, calm, and confident. Jeb noticed something unusual. There was no tension, no struggle, no fear. Even the youngest foal trotted behind her with a trust he had never seen in any of his horses before. "Now watch carefully," Kaya said. She knelt near a patch of soft Martian soil and extended her hands. The horses gathered around, sniffing, pawing lightly, and watching her intently. She touched the soil gently, tapping a rhythm. The horses responded almost immediately, their steps matching the subtle beats she created with her hands. Jeb's eyes widened. That's incredible. I've never seen them move like that, not even with whistles or tools." Kaya looked at him calmly. "It's not tools, it's attention, connection. When you observe carefully, you see patterns others miss." Jeb's pride prickled. "Patterns, horses. That's just instinct, isn't it?" "Instinct," Kaya said softly, "is a form of intelligence. But intelligence can be guided, nurtured, and respected. That's what I do. I don't break their instinct, I work with it." Jeb was silent for a moment. He realized he was witnessing something he had never learned, something his experience alone could not teach. His hands itched to reach out, to try what Kaya was doing, but he stopped himself. This was her lesson, not his. As the morning passed, Kaya taught Jeb something he had never considered: patience. She asked him to observe without interference, to notice every twitch of the ear, every flick of the tail, every blink of an eye. Jeb resisted at first, his mind racing with schedules and duties, but slowly he began to see. One particular mare, a strong, chestnut-colored horse named Ember, had been wild and unpredictable. Jeb had tried training her for weeks, but she had always resisted. Kaya approached Ember gently, kneeling low to the ground. She extended a hand and Ember hesitated. Then slowly, carefully, Ember stepped forward, pressing her nose against Kaya's palm. Jeb's jaw dropped. "I've never seen her like that. Not in 100 tries." Kaya looked at him, eyes calm. "She is not defiant, she is cautious. She needed to know she was safe. You trained her to obey, I trained her to trust." Jeb ran a hand through his hair, feeling a mix of awe and unease. He had always believed strength, discipline, and consistency were the keys to success. Kaya had just shown him another way: subtlety, observation, and respect. By midday, the sun hung high over the Martian plains, casting long shadows across the dome. Kaya had worked with nearly every horse in the herd, each one responding in ways Jeb hadn't thought possible. Even Sam, who had been skeptical at first, began to see the difference. "These horses," Sam said quietly, "they're happier somehow, calmer, more willing to follow." Jeb didn't answer immediately. He was too busy watching Kaya. Her hands moved with a gentle rhythm, her eyes never leaving the horse's movements. She spoke softly, laughed quietly when a foal nipped at her sleeve, and never once showed frustration. "What is this magic?" Jeb asked finally, almost to himself. "No magic," Kaya said, smiling faintly. "Just attention, observation, understanding, and a little patience." Jeb shook his head. "I can't believe it. All this time I thought I knew horses. And you've shown me something I never imagined." Kaya looked at him, calm and steady. Experience is valuable, Jeb, but even the most experienced can learn if they listen. Are you willing to try? Jeb hesitated, pride warred with curiosity. Finally, he nodded. All right. I'm willing. Show me how you do it. Kaya's smile widened, faint but warm. Good. First, we observe, not just the horses but the world around them. Notice the wind, the dust, the angles of the sun. Everything affects how they move and how they feel. Jeb squinted, trying to see the subtle details Kaya pointed out. He noticed how Ember's ears twitched toward a breeze, how the foal's steps followed the contours of the ground, and how the stallion shifted its weight with the slightest change in gravity. It's subtle, he said slowly, but I see it. I think I understand. Good, Kaya said. Observation comes first, then patience. You cannot rush this. You guide, you invite, you wait. They will come to you in their own time. For hours they worked together. Jeb attempted Kaya's methods, and the horses responded differently than they had to his usual commands. There was a softness, a willingness, a curiosity in their movements. By evening, the dome was quiet again. The horses rested, their energy calm but alert. Kaya sat on a low rock watching them. Jeb stood nearby, exhausted but exhilarated. I never thought training could be like this, he admitted. I always believed strength and discipline were enough, but I see now that there's more. Kaya nodded. There is always more. Humans are clever, but sometimes they forget the power of understanding, the power of connection. That is what truly makes a difference. Jeb smiled, humbled but inspired. Then teach me more. I want to learn this way too. Kaya returned his smile. Good. Tomorrow we begin again. But remember, every horse is different. Every moment matters. And patience, always patience. As the sun set over the Martian plains, Jeb realized something new. It was not only the horses who had learned something that day. He had too. And for the first time, he felt that the true adventure of Mars was not only surviving, but learning, growing, and connecting in ways he had never imagined. And somewhere among the red dust and low gravity, the wild horses seemed to sense it too. They had found someone who listened, and slowly they began to trust not out of fear, but out of choice. The Martian morning was crisp inside the dome, though outside the red dust rose in lazy swirls under the weak gravity. Jeb arrived earlier than usual, carrying a small notebook. He had begun taking notes yesterday, trying to understand Kaya's methods, though he wasn't sure his mind could catch up. Kaya was already there, moving quietly among the horses. She didn't rush, didn't call out. She walked, paused, knelt, and observed. The horses responded to her presence like a gentle current of wind. They flowed toward her, but never in a hurry. Jeb watched from the edge, feeling a strange mix of awe and frustration. It's unbelievable, he muttered. They respond to her like she's part of them. Sam, standing beside him, nodded. I know, I've never seen them so calm, so willing, not even with Jeb's full team. Jeb's pride flared slightly. Yet, he said, I'm going to figure out how she does it. I'll learn. Then maybe I can improve it or at least understand it. Kaya spoke softly, more to herself than anyone else. Every horse has its own rhythm, its own fear, its own trust. You cannot impose, only guide. Jeb stepped closer. Kaya, teach me. Today I want to understand it better. Kaya smiled faintly. Good. First, observe again. Not just their movements, but the space between them. Every glance, every step, every pause tells a story. For the next hour, Jeb simply watched. At first, he tried to anticipate Kaya's methods with his old mindset, commands, gestures, authority. But the horses ignored him. Ember, the chestnut mare, trotted past him without hesitation, responding only to Kaya's quiet voice and slow movements. Patience, Kaya whispered. Notice, don't react. See what they choose. Jeb shook his head but obeyed. Slowly, he began to notice the patterns. The way Ember's ears twitched toward a breeze, how the foal's steps mirrored subtle changes in the soil, and how the stallion's breathing matched Kaya's rhythm. He realized that Kaya had tuned herself to the horse's instincts in a way he had never thought possible. Look, Kaya said, gesturing toward a small group of horses near the far side of the dome. The wind shifts slightly there. The soil is softer. They prefer that path, but they wouldn't take it if they felt insecure. Safety first, always. Jeb leaned forward, squinting. You notice everything, even the smallest changes. How do you do it? Kaya shrugged. I don't just notice, I feel it. The horses are part of this world as much as the dust or the sun or the dome itself. Understand the world they live in, and you understand them. Jeb nodded slowly, taking notes. It was overwhelming, so much to consider, so many subtle details he had never accounted for in his own training. By mid-morning, Kaya began a demonstration that left Jeb speechless. She approached the herd slowly, then stopped and crouched near a small foal. Instead of using a tool or command, she simply mirrored the foal's movements. If the foal leaned left, she leaned slightly left. If it paused, she paused. Her breathing matched its soft, uneven rhythm. Jeb watched, astonished, as the foal's tiny hooves followed her movements without hesitation. Ember and the stallion watched, their ears flicking, tails swishing, and then, one by one, they began to follow the rhythm Kaya created. It's like a dance, Jeb whispered to Sam. They're moving together with her, not because she told them to, but because they want to. Kaya stood and extended her hand toward the group. The key is not force, not command. It is invitation. Notice, guide, then wait. They will respond when they feel safe and understood. Jeb attempted to mimic her method, but his movements were stiff, his breaths too loud. The horses paused, uncertain. Kaya laughed quietly, not mockingly, but with gentle encouragement. Relax, be part of the rhythm, not above it. Move with them, not ahead. He tried again. Slowly, hesitantly, he felt the first connection. A young stallion approached him, sniffing his hand. It didn't rush, didn't shy away. He felt a spark of pride, but this time it was different. It wasn't about controlling them, it was about being accepted. Sam, observing quietly, shook his head in amazement. I've never seen Jeb like this. He's learning to listen instead of command. Yes, Kaya said, smiling faintly. That is the difference. Humans are clever, strong, and persistent, but sometimes they forget to pause, to see, to feel. That is the true strength we can offer. As the day progressed, Kaya introduced Jeb to another concept, space. The horses were not meant to be crowded or forced into tight areas. Each movement, each step, required respect for their freedom. She guided Jeb to let the horses choose their path, and then to gently redirect when necessary, always inviting rather than compelling. Jeb noticed a dramatic difference. Ember moved with grace and confidence. The foal nuzzled his hand without fear, and even the stallion, usually stubborn, seemed willing to follow. It was not obedience in the traditional sense. It was cooperation, trust, and understanding. By afternoon, Kaya had begun to train the entire herd together. Jeb watched as she orchestrated the movements with quiet precision. The horses flowed around her in arcs, spirals, and gentle curves. There was no tension, no fear, only calm and responsiveness. How do you manage all of them at once? Jeb asked, genuinely puzzled. Even with machines, I've never achieved this. Kaya's eyes sparkled. Machines can control, but they cannot understand. Understanding is the key. Observe, guide, wait, repeat. One by one, they connect to you. Together, they connect to each other. Jeb followed her instructions carefully. At first, the horses ignored him, but slowly, as he mirrored Kaya's gentle approach, he began to sense the rhythm, the flow of the herd. It was subtle, an almost imperceptible energy that connected them. He felt it in the movement of the horses' hooves, the sway of their necks, the flick of their ears. This is incredible, he whispered to Sam. It's like they're alive in a way I've never seen. More than just animals, they are partners. Yes, Sam agreed softly. I think you're finally seeing it. The way Kaya said, connection, not control. By evening, the training session had transformed the herd. They were not perfectly obedient in Jeb's traditional sense, but they were calm, responsive, and willing. They moved as one when guided, but each horse retained its individuality, its spirit intact. Jeb stood back, exhausted but exhilarated. He felt a new respect for Kaya, for her patience, for her ability to see what he had missed for so long. "You've shown me something I never thought possible," he said quietly. "Not just with horses, but with how to approach anything. Observation, patience, connection. I see now that strength is more than force. It is understanding." Kaya smiled. "Good, that is the lesson. Humans have incredible minds and hearts, but sometimes we forget to use them fully. Patience, observation, and respect, these are tools as powerful as any machine." Jeb nodded slowly. He felt a quiet pride, not for himself, but for what he was learning. For the first time, he understood that training these horses was not about mastery over them, but harmony with them. As the sun dipped low over the Martian plains, casting long red shadows across the dome, the horses grazed and rested peacefully. Kaya knelt beside Ember, stroking her mane gently. Jeb approached, offering a hand to the stallion. The horse sniffed, then lowered its head in quiet acceptance. "I never imagined training could feel like this," Jeb admitted. "It's not just about control, it's about connection, trust, and patience." Kaya nodded. "Exactly, and the more you practice, the more you see. Every horse, every moment, every interaction is a chance to learn." Jeb looked around at the herd, at the flowing movements, at the calm trust he had never seen before. He felt a sense of awe and humility. This was not only a turning point for the horses, but for him as well. He realized something profound. Human ingenuity was not only about invention or skill, but about understanding, patience, and empathy. Kaya had shown him that, and he would never forget it. As the dome quieted for the night, Jeb felt a renewed sense of purpose. Tomorrow would bring more lessons, more challenges, and more growth. But tonight, he rested knowing that something extraordinary was unfolding. Not just the taming of wild horses, but the awakening of a deeper human potential. And somewhere in the red Martian dust, the horses seemed to sense it too. They had found a new rhythm, a harmony, a connection, and they would never go back. The next morning, the dome was bathed in a soft Martian light. Red dust drifted lazily outside, painting everything in a warm, coppery hue. Inside, the horses moved quietly, their hooves barely lifting the fine red soil. Jeb arrived early, as always, notebook in hand, eager to learn more from Kaya. Kaya was already among the herd, crouched near a group of young foals. She moved with the same quiet confidence as before, observing each horse with careful attention. When she saw Jeb approaching, she nodded. "Good morning, Jeb," she said softly. "Are you ready for today's lesson?" Jeb nodded eagerly. "Yes, I want to understand more. I want to see how you do it." Kaya smiled faintly. "Very well, today I will show you something deeper. Not just observation and patience, but the wisdom behind them." Jeb followed her as she moved through the herd. She stopped near Ember, the chestnut mare, and crouched beside her. "Do you see this horse?" she asked. "Her movements, her responses, they are not just instinct. They are shaped by generations of behavior, knowledge passed down through time." Jeb frowned. "Generations? On Mars? They were engineered recently." Kaya shook her head. "Not just Mars, I mean in general. Horses have been humans' companions for thousands of years. The knowledge of how to communicate, how to understand, how to guide, it is part of our culture, passed down quietly from one generation to the next. I learned it from my people, my ancestors, combined with careful observation and science." Jeb's eyes widened. "So it's not just intuition." "Intuition," Kaya said softly, "is experience stored in the mind and heart. But knowledge is more than intuition. It is observation, history, and understanding combined. That is why these horses respond to me. Not because I am stronger, not because I am faster, but because I respect them and use knowledge wisely." Jeb nodded slowly, absorbing her words. He had always thought of training as a set of actions, commands, gestures, repetition. Kaya was showing him that it was something far more profound. She rose and began to move among the horses. "Watch carefully," she said. "Notice how I approach them, but also why. Every step has meaning. Every gesture has purpose. This is not control, it is partnership." Jeb observed as Kaya approached a young stallion, taller and wilder than the others. The horse shifted nervously but didn't run. Kaya crouched, extended her hand slowly, and whispered something in a soft voice. The stallion hesitated, then lowered its head, pressing its muzzle against her hand. Jeb blinked. "It's incredible. How do you know what to say?" Kaya smiled. "It is not words. It is tone, timing, intention. Horses sense our energy, our patience, our respect. They respond not to what we say, but to how we make them feel." For hours, Kaya guided Jeb through her methods. She showed him how to read the horse's body language, how to adjust to their moods, and how to communicate without force. She explained the subtle cues: a flick of the ear, a shift in weight, a quiet exhale. Each small detail held meaning, and each decision shaped the connection between human and horse. Jeb listened and watched, gradually understanding. He attempted Kaya's methods, first stiffly, then with more confidence. He felt the difference immediately. The horses were not reacting out of fear or obedience. They were choosing to engage. At midday, Kaya led the herd toward a soft patch of soil near the dome's edge. "Notice the ground," she said. "The softness, the texture, the temperature. Even the smallest detail affects how they move, how they trust, and how they respond." Jeb knelt beside her, feeling the subtle vibration underfoot. "I never realized everything matters. Not just commands, not just gestures. The world itself, the environment, it's part of the lesson." Kaya nodded. "Exactly. We live in a world of details. Humans have the power to notice, to adapt, and to guide. That is our strength. And when we respect other living beings and the world they inhabit, we can achieve things far beyond force or machinery." As the afternoon sun climbed high, Kaya demonstrated a new technique. She moved slowly among the herd, holding her hands in the air, shifting her weight gently. The horses responded in perfect harmony, their movements flowing like water. Jeb attempted to follow her, moving hesitantly at first, then gradually with more confidence. He noticed something extraordinary. The herd seemed to adjust to him even as he struggled. It was as if they were teaching him, guiding him toward understanding. I think they are helping me learn," he whispered to Sam. "Yes," Sam replied quietly. "They respond not just to her but to your willingness to learn. That is the difference." By evening, Kaya gathered the herd together for a final exercise. She led them in a slow circle, weaving through the dome with precision and care. Jeb followed, guiding a few horses alongside her. The scene was breathtaking, humans and horses moving in harmony, a silent rhythm that seemed almost magical. Kaya paused in the center of the circle. "Do you see, Jeb?" she asked. "This is not control, this is collaboration. Humans have the ability to observe, understand, and connect. When we use that wisely, we achieve far more than with force alone." Jeb felt a lump in his throat. He had always thought of himself as strong, clever, and capable. And yet today he realized he had only scratched the surface. Kaya had shown him that true strength came from patience, understanding, and respect. He knelt beside Ember, stroking her mane gently. "I see now," he said softly. "It's not about domination, it's about connection. Partnership, learning from each other." Kaya smiled. "Yes, humans have the power to innovate, to explore, to survive. But we also have the power to connect, to understand, to grow together with the world around us. That is our greatest strength." The horses grazed quietly around them, their energy calm but alert. The red dust of Mars drifted through the air, settling softly on the dome floor. Jeb realized that this day had changed him, not just as a rancher but as a human being. "I never thought training could teach me so much," he admitted. "Not just about horses, but about life, about patience, about understanding." Kaya nodded. "That is the lesson, Jeb. Observation, patience, and respect are not just for horses, they are for every part of life. And when we use them wisely, we can achieve greatness. Jeb looked around at the herd, at Kaya, and at the dome that housed them. He felt a deep sense of humility and awe. For the first time, he understood that human ingenuity was not just about strength or cleverness, but about empathy, patience, and connection. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for showing me this, for teaching me something I didn't know I needed to learn." Kaya smiled faintly. "The lesson was always here. You only had to open your eyes and heart to see it." As the sun set over the Martian plains, casting long shadows across the dome, Jeb felt a quiet sense of triumph. The herd had been transformed, yes, but so had he. He was no longer just a rancher who tamed horses through commands and authority. He was a human capable of learning, observing, and connecting in ways he had never imagined. And somewhere among the horses, a quiet energy lingered, a shared understanding that humans and animals could coexist not through force, but through trust, respect, and collaboration. Jeb realized that this was only the beginning. There were more lessons to learn, more skills to master, and more connections to form. But tonight, he rested knowing that something extraordinary had been awakened, not just in the horses, but in himself. And as the stars blinked softly above the Martian dome, he felt a deep, quiet certainty. Humanity's greatest strength was not in control, not in dominance, but in understanding, patience, and the courage to connect. The Martian morning came quietly, with pale light filtering through the dome. Red dust swirled outside, creating soft, shifting patterns on the curved walls. Inside, the horses moved calmly, a gentle rhythm to their steps. Jeb arrived first, notebook in hand, but today he didn't just want to observe, he wanted to participate. Kaya was already at the edge of the herd, crouched low and scanning the horses. She looked up as Jeb approached. "Good morning, Jeb," she said softly. "Are you ready for today's lesson?" Jeb nodded. "Yes, I want to try everything I've learned. I want to guide them, but in the way you showed me." Kaya's faint smile widened. "Good, today we put everything together. Observation, patience, connection, respect. Are you ready?" He took a deep breath. "I'm ready." They moved together into the center of the dome. Kaya began with a soft, low whistle, almost a murmur. The horses shifted gently, responding not to the sound alone but to her energy, her calm presence. Jeb mimicked her posture, his movements slow and deliberate. The horses seemed to sense the change, their curiosity piqued. "Remember," Kaya whispered, "we guide them, we do not force. Invite, do not demand. Listen, do not assume." Jeb nodded and extended his hand toward a young stallion. It hesitated for a moment, ears flicking, eyes bright. He held his breath, remembering Kaya's lessons. Slowly, carefully, he mirrored its posture, matching its breathing, its subtle movements. The stallion stepped forward, sniffed his hand, and then pressed its muzzle gently against his palm. Jeb's heart leapt. He had done it not through strength or command, but through connection, patience, and respect. Kaya nodded approvingly. "Well done. That is the first step. Now guide them as a herd, not just as individuals. Notice how they respond to each other." Jeb turned his attention to the group. He realized something new. The horses were not isolated. Each one influenced the others. Ember, the chestnut mare, moved alongside him, her calm presence encouraging the younger foals. The stallion followed, confident now, sensing the rhythm of the herd. Slowly, Jeb guided the group in a gentle circle, moving with Kaya's instructions in mind. The horses responded beautifully, their movements flowing as if choreographed. There was no fear, no tension, only trust and cooperation. Sam watched from the side, a small smile on his face. "I've never seen them like this," he murmured. "It's like they're part of something bigger, not just following but understanding." Jeb glanced at Kaya. "I never imagined it could be like this. It's harmony, not obedience." "Yes," Kaya said softly, "and that is the lesson. Strength alone cannot create harmony. Intelligence, patience, and empathy can. the exercise continued for hours. Jeb guided the herd through slow arcs, gentle turns, and soft spirals. Each horse moved with grace, responding to his guidance while still retaining its own spirit. He felt a new sense of pride, not the pride of domination, but the pride of connection, understanding, and achievement through patience. At one point, a foal strayed toward the edge of the dome, curious about a patch of dust. Jeb froze, remembering his old instinct to call it back with force. Instead, he extended a hand, mirrored the foal's curiosity, and waited. Slowly, the foal returned to the group, following him willingly. Jeb's heart swelled with a quiet triumph. Kaya watched silently, her eyes bright with approval. That is the difference between control and guidance. You are learning, Jeb. You are seeing the power of understanding. By afternoon, they began a more complex exercise. Kaya asked Jeb to lead the herd through a simulated terrain, designed to test their adaptability. The ground shifted in soft patches, small obstacles scattered throughout the area. Jeb guided the horses carefully, observing their responses and adjusting his movements. He noticed how Ember led the foals naturally around obstacles, how the stallion adjusted its steps based on the terrain, and how the youngest horses mirrored the older ones. Everything was interconnected, a living, breathing lesson in harmony and teamwork. "This is amazing," Jeb whispered to Sam. "It's like they're teaching me as much as I'm teaching them." "Yes," Sam agreed. "And that's the HFY part, isn't it? Humans learning, adapting, growing, and thriving alongside other intelligent beings." Jeb nodded. He had spent his life believing in human strength and skill, yet now he realized something far greater. Humans were not just strong or clever, they were adaptable, observant, empathetic. And when these traits were combined with patience and respect, they could achieve extraordinary things. As the sun began to dip toward the Martian horizon, Kaya and Jeb guided the herd into a final formation. The horses moved in a perfect circle, each one aligned, calm, and attentive. Jeb's hands were steady, his posture relaxed, and his mind focused. He felt a deep connection not only with the horses but with the world around him, the dome, the red soil, the soft Martian light. "This is it," Kaya said quietly. "This is the culmination of everything we have practiced. Observe, guide, connect." Jeb nodded, and with a soft gesture he led the herd in a slow, flowing circle. The horses followed willingly, moving in harmony, their energy calm and confident. He felt a profound sense of satisfaction. This was not the pride of conquest, but the pride of achievement through understanding, patience, and partnership. Sam stepped forward, clapping softly. "Incredible! I've never seen anything like it." "You've transformed the herd and yourself, Jeb." Jeb smiled, looking at Kaya. "I couldn't have done it without you. I thought I knew everything about horses, about training, but you've shown me something far greater. Humans can do more than we think if we learn, observe, and connect." Kaya nodded. "That is the HFY lesson, Jeb. Humans are clever, adaptable, and resilient. When we combine our intelligence with empathy, patience, and respect, we can achieve things beyond our expectations. That is our true strength." The horses, sensing the completion of the exercise, began to graze quietly. Ember nuzzled Jeb's hand, the stallion pressed close to Kaya, and the foals played gently nearby. The red Martian dust settled softly, and the dome was filled with a calm, almost magical energy. Jeb looked around, taking it all in. He felt a quiet awe. This was not just a victory for training, it was a victory for human potential. Humanity had the power to thrive, to adapt, to learn, and to connect, not only with each other but with the world around them. He knelt beside Ember, stroking her mane gently. "I understand now," he said softly. "This is what makes humans extraordinary. Not just skill, not just strength, but curiosity, patience, and the courage to connect." Kaya smiled faintly. "Exactly. You have learned the lesson well, and now you can carry it forward, not just with these horses but in everything you do." As the Martian sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, soft shadows across the dome, Jeb felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The herd had been transformed, yes, but so had he. He was no longer just a rancher or trainer. He was a human who had discovered the depth of his own ingenuity, empathy, and capacity to connect. The stars blinked softly above the Martian dome, distant and cold, yet full of possibility. Jeb knew that this was only the beginning. There would be more challenges, more lessons, and more growth. But tonight, he rested with quiet certainty, knowing that humans could thrive in ways that went far beyond brute strength or cleverness. Kaya knelt beside him, placing a hand gently on his shoulder. "You see now, Jeb. Humans are capable of greatness, not just in survival but in understanding, creating, and connecting. That is our strength." Jeb nodded, a smile spreading across his face. "Yes, and now I understand what true strength really is." The herd settled down for the night, calm and peaceful, the soft sounds of hooves on Martian soil echoing quietly through the dome. Jeb and Kaya stood together, looking at the scene before them. It was a moment of quiet triumph, a celebration not of dominance or victory, but of connection, respect, and the extraordinary potential of humanity. And somewhere in the soft glow of Martian light, the horses seemed to sense it too. They were no longer wild in the way they had been before. They had found trust, harmony, and partnership. And humanity, represented by Jeb and Kaya, had discovered its own power, not through force, but through patience, empathy, and understanding. As the night settled over the Martian plains, Jeb realized something profound. This was the true meaning of HFY. Humans could thrive, not by conquering, but by learning, observing, and connecting. And in that connection lay the greatest strength of all. Mars was vast, wild, and still full of unknowns. But inside the dome, with the horses calm and trusting, Jeb knew that humanity's potential was limitless. Patience, understanding, and empathy had proven stronger than any tool or command. And together, humans and horses had achieved something extraordinary. He looked at Kaya, who nodded knowingly. "We did it," he said softly. "Yes," she replied. "Together, we did it." And for the first time, Jeb felt that kind of triumph that did not need to be shouted. It was quiet, powerful, and enduring. The triumph of understanding, the triumph of patience, the triumph of humanity.